Alright, for this video I want to go through how to prepare a simple Form 1040 in TurboTax for the 2023 tax year. So we are using the online version. They do have a software that you could download and run locally, but we're using the online version. And our taxpayer here, John, is a carryover from the prior year, right? So we've got the 2022 tutorials for John taxpayer, and so this is the second year that we're preparing his return with TurboTax. So we've got the Intuit TurboTax home screen up here. In addition to that, we've got the support that we're going to look at. So we've got a W-2 for John. We have John's 1099 INT for some interest income, and then we've got John's 1098E for the student loan interest that he paid during the year. And then just one slide here, very brief, covering the fact pattern and then the forms and schedules that we're going to cover here. So this video is just going to cover these top items here, right? So how to enter the W-2 for wages, how to enter the 1099 INT for interest. So we're going to have some taxable interest, some tax exempt interest, and then how to account for the student loan interest deduction. So we're going to see that his student loan interest is greater than the amount deductible, and so we'll show how to account for that. And then the Form 8889 for HSA contributions that were made via his employer. Now, separate videos will be done for all these other items. We're just going to focus on these top four elements here. So our taxpayer here, John Q. Taxpayer, he's a single filer, no dependents, sales agent, living and working in St. Pete. And so as we run through here, he's got a W-2 for his wages, he's got some interest income, and he's got some student loan interest that he paid during the year. Now he also is going to be claiming the standard deduction, so he's not itemizing, so we're not going to be doing a Schedule A for John. All right, so if we go back to the return here, so if this is your first time using TurboTax, you'll have to populate the personal info section. In our case, because it's a carryover from prior year, all this information is already inputted for us, which is quite helpful. So things that you'll have to enter, certainly your name, your social security number, date of birth, your occupation, and then what state you are a resident. Now his filing status here is single, so same as last year. No dependents are being added, and then his mailing address, contact phone number, and we're not going to have any other state filings because we don't have any income from any other states. Now what's also important to note here is as we input all this information, we want to keep referencing the print center. It's good to actually print preview the return as you prepare it to make sure that stuff is actually being entered and flowing through to the correct spot. I often see mistakes made where you just kind of enter everything in the screen here, but you have no idea where it actually ends up on the return, and very often it might be in the wrong place, or it's just not being calculated correctly. So it's always good to kind of reference this. So if we have a look at what our baseline is so far, so we'll see here that the only information that's included so far, right, is his name, his address, his social security number, and filing status. The rest of the page is blank except for the standard deduction, right? So the standard deduction for single filers, $13,850 for the year. And on page 2 of the 1040, also blank, right? Because we haven't inputted any information yet. All right, so if we go back to the My Info screen, so we've got all the personal information here entered, so that's good. And so now it's time to move on to actually entering the income and expenses the taxpayer is going to have. So in the federal section, we have some drop downs here for wages and income, deductions and credits, other situations, and then a federal review. If you have this for the second year, there will be some items up here that are carried forward. If you haven't used TurboTax yet, it's often just blank, and so you have to manually add everything using these drop-down menus. So if you scroll down a bit, you can see where we enter things like our W-2. We're going to need to work in this section as well, investments and savings for the 1099 INT. And then we'll also be in the deductions and credits section for that student loan interest. Right. So if we start with the wages and salaries, we want to work on my W-2. Go ahead and continue. So the W-2 we have is from Fake Employer Inc. This is the EIN, so the tax ID number for the company. And then the Social Security number at the top is obviously your unique SSN for the employee. So the EIN, we'll go ahead and enter that. Of course, that's not a real EIN. All nines is not a real tax ID number. And how would we like to add the W-2? So you have a couple options now. You can upload it from your computer. You could take a photo with your phone, and all of the information will be scanned. In our case, we're just going to type it in ourselves. So we've got the same information here. All of this just comes directly from the W-2. So we've got the EIN entered up there again, the employer name, so Fake Employer Inc., and then the street address. So what's the street address here? Oh, all nine's not real street name. It's in St. Pete. Now, the information here, it's good to include it, but what you'll see is it doesn't really show up on the return itself. It'll be included in the supplemental statements and worksheets, but the IRS doesn't actually get this information, but they will have it on file because the W-2s are already submitted by the employer to the IRS directly. All right, then we scroll down to the employee information. You want to key in the Social Security number again, and it should match, right? It should match your tax return, so it's a good validation there. So we've got John, taxpayer, his street address, everything looks good there. And so now we start to input the income and withholding taxes information. So if we have a look at the W-2 real quick, talk about some of these numbers. The income that's going to be subject to federal income taxes is the Box 1 wages, so the $55,500. Now, Box 3 and 5 are your wages that were subject to Social Security taxes and Medicare taxes. So you'll notice here that there's a variance between 1 and 3 of $3,000, right? The $3,000 very commonly is going to be related to your 401k contributions, and those are reported down here on line 12, box D. So code D, $3,000 of pre-tax 401k contributions. And that's because the pre-tax 401k contributions, you are allowed a federal income tax deduction for those amounts. So it reduces your box 1 wages, but your wages are still subject to Social Security and Medicare taxes on those amounts. So that's why you will see a variance here, and then you'll also see a code D amount, and that's going to be the difference. All right. Box 12, code DD, is for the employer cost of the health insurance for you, and then code W is the employer contributions to your HSA, which is your health savings account. Now, if you're covered by a retirement plan at work, that box will be checked as well. And that's important because whether you're covered by a plan or not at work will determine how much traditional IRA contributions you can make and deduct if you want to do that separately, right? There's different rules for whether you're covered by a plan at work or not. Box 2, federal income tax withheld, that's going to flow through to page 2 of the 1040, so that's actually going to be used as a payment against our tax liability. And then, of course, the Social Security and Medicare taxes, those are the payroll taxes imposed on your wages. Those aren't really reported anywhere in your return unless you are subject to that additional Medicare tax because you have very high wages. All right, so let's start looking at the return and start keying in some of this information. So the Box 1 wages was the $55,500 and the federal income tax withheld of $5,000. So if we go $55,500, federal income tax withheld of $5,000. Box 3 and Box 5 is the $58,500, right? So $58,500, and then the Social Security taxes withheld $36.27 and then $8.48 on the Medicare. So $36.27 and then $8.48 on the Medicare taxes withheld. Now, less common items here. We don't have any entries for boxes 7 through 11, so those can be blank. But we do have some box 12 entries. So box 12, The first one is code D, right? Those were the elective deferrals, so the 401k contributions. So that's the $3,000 figure there. And then we have $4,800 for the health insurance, and then the HSA contribution of $1,000. So $4,800 is the health insurance. And then code W, company contributions to HSA for $1,000. Then we have our box 13 checkbox for the retirement plan, so we'll go ahead and add that. We don't have any box 14 items, and then no state issues down here either. Okay, so all those can just be blank, so we'll go ahead and click continue. All right, double check the state and local taxes, right? We don't have any state or local taxes. None of that is imposed in Florida. If you're living in a state like New York, particularly Manhattan, you're going to have state and local taxes withheld. Pennsylvania, the same. Ohio, a lot of states do that. All right, so uncommon situations here. They note these don't apply to most taxpayers, but they have to ask, right? So did we have a handwritten W-2? Was it corrected, right? All of these are important here. Non-qualified pension plans, right? We didn't work outside the U.S., right? So none of these apply to us. So we're going to check that box at the bottom that none of these apply. Okay, so your HSA means you took advantage of pre-tax dollars to help for health costs, right? So now we'll check if you can get a tax break for this later in the deductions and credits. Okay, so there's our W-2 completed. So we got one W-2, Fake Employer Inc. If you have multiple W-2s because you had more than one job during the year, then go ahead and enter the other W-2. In our case, that's only the one, so we're going to hit done for now. Okay, so now we're going to look at the next item on our list, which is that 1099 INT for interest. So we go down to investments and savings, hit that drop-down menu. We have it separated into interest, dividends, 1099B. Those are the brokerage transactions, right? So sales of assets, stocks, crypto. And if you have any capital loss carryovers, go ahead and account for those. In our case, we don't. So we're going to go ahead and just enter the interest from 1099 INT. Okay, so did we have any investment income? Yes, right? So we have interest earned within our brokerage account. So we're going to hit yes, move forward. Did we have any crypto income or losses during the year? No, we didn't trade any crypto. Now they do give you the option here to import this information, right? So this is the nice thing about TurboTax is they've got relationships with other brokers and banks. You can log in and download everything automatically. In our case, we're not going to be doing that because these are obviously not real accounts. So we're going to go ahead and just input everything directly. So we're going to go ahead and enter a different way. The investment type is 1099 INT. Go ahead and continue. So you can bring it from the bank, so import it directly, upload it, snap a photo with our phone, or last but not least, type it in ourselves. So that's what we're going to do. Type it in ourselves here. Okay, so receive from, this is the name of the financial institution. So if we look at our 1099 INT here, we've got the fake brokerage company Inc. and the payer's TIN. So we'll go ahead and enter fake brokerage company Inc. And here we have the ones that are most common, right, are boxes 1 and 3. So we've got some interest income in box 1, and if we had any in box 3, we can input that as well. If we take a closer look at our interest form here, we do have box 1 interest income of $301. But we've also got some tax-exempt interest income of $65. So tax-exempt interest at the federal level is interest income from municipal bonds, right, or other state or local obligations. So we've got 301 of regular interest and 65 of tax-exempt. So we'll enter the 301 of regular. And as it asks us here, right, my form has info in other boxes. So here are the less common items. Right, our tax-exempt interest in box 8 is going to be $65. And all the other boxes are blank for us, so we can leave all of those out. State taxes, we don't have any state taxes on our 1099 INT, and the FATCA filing requirement box is not checked. So we've got everything inputted there. We'll continue. All right, do any of these apply? I need to adjust the interest reported. My state doesn't tax all of this interest. Well, we're in Florida, so none of that applies. So none of these are going to apply. Okay, so which state is your tax-exempt interest from? In this example, we're going to assume it's from Florida, right? Now, the reason why this is important, because if you live in a state that has an income tax, so let's say you live in New York and you're a New York resident, New York will have the ability to tax that out-of-state municipal bond interest. Now, the federal government can't tax it, but the state could tax it. So in our case, we live in Florida. Florida doesn't have an income tax anyway, so you could put anything down here. But in our case, we're just going to assume it's Florida. If you're preparing this and you live in a state that has income tax, you've got to be careful and figure out exactly where the municipal bond interest is coming from, because it'll be exempt from federal taxes, but your state might tax it. Okay, take time to confirm the info. So we've got the income section here for the investments and savings. We've got the brokerage company, our 1099 INT. We can see here we've got the two items reported. Box 1 interest, $301. Box 8 tax exempt interest, $65. Everything looks good there. So we'll go ahead and confirm that. Okay, so now we've got the W-2 entered, we've got the investments and savings information entered, and now it's prompting us to have a look at the Form 8889 for that HSA contribution. So let's have a review of that, and we'll knock that out before we go to the student loan interest information. So tell us about the HSA account. So we have this HSA account. It was set up with the help of our employer, right? We have a Section 125 plan. So we've got an HSA account there. And remember, this is from the W-2. So W-2 box 12 code W. So did you use your HSA to pay for anything in the year? In our case, no. We only made the contribution. The reason why this is important, because when you draw money out of that HSA to pay for expenses, it's generally not taxable. However, if you take money out and use it for another reason, then that's a problem. Then you got to pay some taxes on it. So no, we didn't inherit the HSA. Enter your HSA contribution. So we don't want to double up, right? So we already are showing that we have box 12 code W. And then if we made any extra contributions during the year, which you're generally allowed to do up to the maximum, you would input those here. In our case, we didn't, so we're just going to leave that 0. Did your employer tell you about other contributions? So it's uncommon, but sometimes employers make contributions that apply to a previous year. And in our case, no. We just had the 1,000. We did not have any Medicare during 2023. Were you covered by a high deductible plan? Right? And so how you answer this is definitely important, right? In order to be eligible for an HSA, you have to be covered by a high deductible health insurance plan. Now, your employer should let you know, right? They wouldn't have set up the HSA for you otherwise. But in our case, we do have a high deductible plan, and the type of coverage we have here is just a self-only plan because he's a single filer, he's not married, he has no dependents. Did we overfund it during 2022? Okay, so in 2022, so they're asking last year, did we put in too much? So did we contribute more than we were legally allowed to do under the tax code? And the answer is no. So in our case, we didn't put any excess contributions in. All right, so here's our summary, right? The deduction that we're going to get is 0, and that's because all of this was done via our employer, so it's already factored into the W-2 wages. If we made separate contributions outside of working with the employer, then you might get an additional deduction for those contributions. We didn't have any distributions during the year, no excess contributions, nothing was withdrawn. So everything looks good there. We'll go ahead, done. Okay, so now we've got to look at the W-2's been entered. We've got our self-employment income, none for this year. At least not so far. Maybe in a separate video we'll modify the fact pattern and add that. But we've got so the employer here, the W-2. We've got our investment income. We've got the HSA information updated so that 8889 will be populated. And so now it's a matter of looking for the last item, which is that student loan interest deduction. Okay, so let's go to the deductions and credits. We can hit done with income, and then it'll jump us to the next page. Okay. So before I start going through all this, I want to get into the deductions and credits, and then we'll look at the review. So the first prompt, and this is because we had this issue last year, right? Did we make any payments on a student loan? The answer is yes. Okay, so did anyone in your family have college or university expenses? So you would receive the 1098-T for payments made to a university. In our case, no, we're done with school. We did not make any donations to charity. We did not make any contributions to a traditional or Roth IRA. We did not make any other estimated tax payments, right? So we didn't make quarterly payments, nor did we make any payments with an extension because we're not on an extension yet. We didn't make any energy saving improvements to the home. We didn't pay any foreign taxes. We don't have any FTC carryovers. We didn't pay any car registration fees. Well, so what they're asking there is if you're going to itemize, car registration fees, taxes on personal property can be included as an itemized deduction, but for simplicity, we're going to say no because we are not taking this itemized deductions. We're just claiming the standard. So we're going to say no to all these. Anyone listed on your return at Marketplace insurance? No. Okay, now it's time for the fun part. Yeah. Okay, so now we need to figure out how to get the inputs for the student loan interest, right? So we can see there's a couple of options here that are prompting us. So we have entries that can potentially be done for mortgage interest. So if we did have a house and we were paying interest on our mortgage, we would get a Form 1098 from the bank. If we had the house, we would also pay real property taxes. Those are an itemized deduction if you have them. We've already gone through the HSA stuff. So now we can see here, student loan interest paid, 1098E. So we'll go ahead and start this. Did we get a 1098E for student loan interest? And the answer is yes. It is in our name, right? So the reason why they ask that is because if you have kids, and they're the ones that actually owe the debt, but you're paying it, it's a different story. So yes, we have it in our name. Okay, so similar issue with the other 1099s. You can upload it, scan it. In our case here, we're just going to type it in ourselves. So if we go back to the 1098, we got Student Loan Company, Inc. And the amount of interest that was paid is in box 1. So we paid $2,640 of interest during the year. So 2,640. Go ahead and hit continue. And that's it, right? So we've got our student loan interest entered. Now, this shows the total amount of interest that was reported, but what we'll see later is how much is actually deducted. So it tells us, congrats, we do get a tax break. The student loan interest deduction is going to be $2,500. So if you need more information, obviously you can click that and read about it, but the student loan interest deduction is capped at $2,500. So whether you pay the $2,600 or you pay $3,000 or $10,000, the only amount you can deduct is $2,500 for the year. And there are phase outs, right? So if your AGI is above certain thresholds, this will even be limited more. All right, so we'll go ahead and hit done there. All of that. So we've got everything inputted that we need to, right? So now it's doing some double checking here, right? So no, we didn't own a home, we rented. Standard deduction is right for you. So the federal refund with the standard deduction as it is now is $13,850 is our standard deduction. Remember, that was the only thing that was entered when we first looked at the form. And so right now, as it stands, our federal refund is going to be $483. So I'm going to continue here. Now it's going to prompt me to look at any kind of like uncommon tax situations. I just already know that's not going to apply, for this fact pattern. But if you are doing this, then yes, certainly keep going, see all the uncommon situations that could apply. Let's have a quick look at the form, and I just want to highlight where some of these items pop out. So as you enter them, you know that they're flowing through to the right area. So let's look at our return as it is now. We've got the 1040 again. Here's his information at the top. What I noticed we do need to complete is this digital asset question. So we'll have to find where to answer that. Right? You have to answer yes or no whether you traded any crypto. So here we go on the income. So there's that box 1 wages, $55,500. On the interest income section, we can see there's the $65 of tax exempt interest reported in 2A. And then the taxable interest is $301. Now the total income before any kind of adjustments is $55,801, and we'll see here there's that $2,500 of student loan interest deduction on Schedule 1. So Schedule 1 is the additional income and adjustments to income, and if you go to Part 2, we can see on line 21 we have the student loan interest deduction of $2,500. So that's that amount flowing up here to line 10. The standard deduction, $13,850, so our taxable income, $39,451, and the tax calculated on that is the $4,517. Fortunately, the software does all that for us, so we don't actually have to look up the tables. And then we see here the payment section, there is our federal income tax withheld from the W-2. Right, so our W-2, box 2, shows the federal income taxes withheld of $5,000. That's the amount that we get credited against this total tax liability. So the $5,000 there offsets all of that $4,517, so we get an excess, a refund of $483. All right, so now the last item to look at is where to enter that crypto question. So normally that would prompt us in the Federal Review. So if we go to the Federal Review and check the info here, okay, 2 details to review. There it is, right? So digital assets, let's go ahead and review this. Please read below and take any necessary action. So did you have a financial stake in digital assets? So yes, I either sold it, received digital assets payments as a reward, exchange, right? Or, so obviously yes. If you did, no if you did not. So we'll answer no there. Okay, so they are acting. Okay, so this is, you probably won't get this so long as you enter your correct SSN, but see how it is prompting us here because it knows that this is just not a real tax ID number. So if we go back to the print center and just make sure that that digital asset question is updated. Scroll down here and yep, there it is. So digital assets, this is now being answered yes or no, right? No for us. We didn't sell or exchange any kind of crypto during the year, so everything's good. So this, as it is ready to file. Now what you can do is TurboTax will allow you an opportunity to enter information to get a direct deposit, which is highly recommended, but much quicker, much safer than getting a paper check in the mail. So if you're back in the TurboTax section and you complete the Federal Review section and then go to the actual file, right? So you want to complete all the Federal Review, make sure everything's good to go, and then go ahead and file, and then it'll prompt you to enter all that information. So that covers it for this tutorial. I hope that was helpful, kind of get you a sense of how to move around in the software. And then please do check out all the other videos that I post covering some of the other sections within this platform. All right, thanks so much, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye.